Good morning, students. So in this video, I'll explain section 3A of the Companies Act 2013, which deals with the consequence of reduction in the number of members below the statutory limit. Important section, very important section. Okay. So first we'll discuss the section 3 of the Companies Act. Section 3 of Companies Act 2013 says minimum number of members. So as per section 3 of the Companies Act 2013, the minimum number of members, minimum number of members. So how much is the minimum number of members? Private company 2 members, public company 7 members. Private company 2 members, public company 7 members. This is the minimum number of members. So now the question, if there is a reduction in the number of members, okay, reduced number of members in the company, reduced number of members in the company reduced below this limit, number of members in the company reduced below this limit, below the limit. So if the number of members in the company reduced below the limit, sir, why the number of members will reduce? If the company started with minimum 2 members or with minimum 7 members, under what circumstances there may be a reduction in the number of members? Well, so we'll come to that. Under what circumstances there may be reduction in the number of members? So first one is, so transfer of shares from one person to another person, transfer of shares from one member to another member, transfer of shares from one member to another member, transfer of shares from one member to another member. This may be one reason for reduction in the number of members, or forfeiture of shares. Company may forfeit the shares, forfeiture of shares. Okay, company may forfeit the shares. Because of this reason also, the number of members may reduce below the limit. The number of members may reduce below the limit. So in that case, what the company has to do? Company has two options. So if the number of members reduce, company has two options. Option 1, option 2. Company has two options. Option 1, option 2. What is the option 1? Option 1 is increase the number of members within 6 months. Increase the members within 6 months. Increase the members within 6 months. So as per that, there is a minimum number of members 2 and 7, but there may be a chances that the number of members may reduce below the limit. So example, transfer of shares or forfeiture of shares. There are two options. If the number of members reduces below the limit, whatever may be the reason, there are two options to the company. Option 1, increase the members within 6 months. Option 2, close the company after 6 months. Option 2, close the company immediately after 6 months. Option 2, close the company immediately after 6 months. Option 2, close the company immediately after 6 months. If the number of members reduces below the limit, either you can increase the number of members within 6 months, or you have to close the company within 6 months or immediately after 6 months. No, sir, company failed. Company failed. That means neither company is able to increase the number of members, nor company is able to close, nor company is willing to close the business. Company is unable to increase the number of members. At the same time, company is unwilling to close its business. So in that case, what happens is that personal liability gets attracted. Personal liability gets attracted. Personal liability gets attracted. Okay, personal liability gets attracted. So the question is, to whom that personal liability? So personal liability gets attracted. So to whom that personal liability? To whom that personal liability gets attracted? How much is that personal liability? How much is that personal liability, and how to recover that liability? How to recover that liability? If the company is unable to increase the number of members, or if the company is unwilling to close the business, then personal liability gets attracted. Okay, so to whom the personal liability gets attracted? So members continuing in the company even after 6 months and are aware of those and are aware about the reduction in number of members, continuing in the company after 6 months, continuing in the company after 6 months, continuing in the company even after 6 months, and aware of reduction in the number of members, and aware of reduction in the number of members, and aware of reduction in the number of members. So a person who satisfied, a person who attracted these two conditions, a member who attracted these two conditions, for him personal liability will arise. A member is continuing in the company even after 6 months, and that too he is aware of the reduction. Even if one condition is failed, then he can escape. Either he should leave the company before 6 months, or even if he's staying in the company even after 6 months, at least he has to prove that he is not aware about the reduction in the number of members. Therefore, a member who gets attracted with these two conditions will get personal liability. In order to escape from the personal liability, he has to escape from any one of these conditions. Either he should leave the company within 6 months, or he has to prove that he is not aware about the reduction in the number of members. If he can escape one of these conditions, then he is out of the personal liability. If both these conditions are attracted, then personal liability will come. Okay. Aware of the reduction in the number of members. Okay. So a member who gets attracted these two conditions, continuing in the company and aware, continuing aware. Okay, a person who is continuing in the company even after 6 months and is aware about the reduction, then for that personal liability will arise. And what is the extent of personal liability? What is the extent of personal liability? Personal responsibilities for the liabilities incurred by the company after 6 months. To the extent of liabilities incurred by the company after 6 months. To the extent of liabilities incurred with respect to liabilities incurred by the company after 6 months. Okay, with respect to liabilities incurred by the company after 6 months. With respect to liability incurred by company after 6 months, not before that. With respect to liability incurred by the company after 6 months, for that he is liable. He is not liable before reduction, during the 6 months, and after reduction. Okay, so now look at see. Reduction in the number of members, say happened somewhere 1st John 2021. Okay, and there are some liabilities before that, and grace period ends. Okay, grace period ends. So 30th June 21, grace period end. 6 months is the grace period. Okay, 6 months is the grace period. 6 months is the grace period, and liabilities incurred during this period. So for this, no personal liability. For this, no personal liability. No personal liability. Liabilities incurred by the company before reduction and liabilities incurred by the company during the said 6 months, no personal liability. Personal liability comes only for the liabilities incurred after 6 months. Personal liability attracted only for liabilities incurred after 6 months. No personal liability for liabilities incurred by the company before reduction, liabilities incurred by the company during the said 6 months of grace period. There is no personal liability. Personal liability is only with respect to liabilities incurred by the company after 6 months. Okay, that is what the point. With respect to liability incurred after 6 months. And how to recover that liability? Severally, not joint and severally. It's not that whole amount I should recover only from one member. I can recover only the share of a particular member. Company cannot recover whole amount from a single member because it is not a joint and several liability. It is only several liability. Therefore, company can file a suit against a particular member to recover only to the share of that member, not the entire liabilities, to the share of that member. Okay, these are about the consequence of reduction in the number of members. So first, what is the statutory limit? Section 3 says, as per section 3, as per section 3 of the Companies Act, private company should have minimum 2 members, public company should have minimum 7 members. And there will be possibility of reducing that number of members because of transfer of shares from one member to another or forfeiture of shares. Okay, so there are two possibilities why the number of members may reduce. In that case, company has two options. Either it has to increase the number of members within 6 months, or it has to close the company immediately after 6 months. Company failed to avail both the options. Neither company is able to increase the number of members, nor company gets closed. Company is willing to close after 6 months. In that case, personal liability gets attracted. So to whom that personal liability will be attracted? How much is that personal liability? So personal liability is attracted to those members who are continuing in the company even after 6 months, and out of those also continuing members also, not to all continuing members. Those who are aware about the reduction in the number of members. If a particular member is continuing in the company even after 6 months, but he was staying abroad and he is not aware of what's happening in the company, then he can escape, saying that, sir, I am not aware about the reduction. Therefore, you should be continuing in the company even after 6 months and are aware about the reduction. Then only personal liability will be attracted. So how much is the personal liability with respect to liabilities incurred by the company after 6 months? Not with respect to liabilities before reduction, not with respect to liabilities during the grace period of 6 months, only for liabilities after 6 months. How to recover that liability? Severally. Okay, not joint and several, only severally. Okay, thank you.